Deep in the shadows of history, hidden beneath layers of dust, doubt, and intrigue, lie ancient manuscripts that whisper secrets we were never meant to hear. Some of these texts hold wisdom, others deception, but few have sparked as much controversy as the Jordan Lead Codices. Picture this: a small, unassuming books, their pages cast not from fragile parchment but from sheets of lead, etched with cryptic symbols and mysterious writings. Discovered in a remote cave in Jordan, these artifacts have ignited fiery debates among scholars, theologians, and treasure hunters alike. Are they genuine relics from the dawn of Christianity, or an elaborate hoax designed to deceive the world? The answer is far from simple, and the story behind them is even stranger than fiction. Imagine holding one of these codices in your hands. The metal is cool to the touch, the inscriptions worn by time. Some claim they contain lost teachings of early Christian sects, hidden away for centuries. Others argue they're modern forgeries, crafted with just enough age to fool experts. But here's what's undeniable: the Jordan Lead Codices have captivated imaginations because they tap into something primal. Our fascination with the unknown, our hunger for answers buried by time. Why would someone go to such lengths to create these artifacts? What truths or lies do they hold? The mystery only deepens when you consider the stakes. If real, they could rewrite religious history. If fake, they've already fooled some of the sharpest minds in archaeology. This isn't just a story about ancient books, it's about the lengths humans will go to uncover or conceal the past. It's about the blurred line between discovery and deception, faith and fraud. And as we unravel the tangled threads of this enigma, we'll explore hidden caves, forensic science, and even the shadowy world of antiquities smuggling. But most importantly, we'll ask the questions that linger in the silence between the lines. What happens when history itself becomes a mystery, and how far would you go to uncover the truth? Strap in, because the journey into the secrets of the Jordan Lead Codices is about to take us places few have dared to go. In 2008, a Bedouin treasure hunter searching the rugged hills of northern Jordan made a discovery that would send shockwaves through the world of archaeology. Inside a long-forgotten cave, tucked beneath centuries of dust and debris, lay a collection of small, metal-bound books unlike anything the modern world had ever seen. The codices, barely larger than a credit card, were crafted not from the expected papyrus or vellum, but from sheets of lead, each page painstakingly inscribed with cryptic symbols and weathered text. Word of the find spread like wildfire, igniting a frenzy of excitement and no small amount of suspicion. For scholars, the very existence of these objects defied expectations. Ancient texts typically survive as fragile scrolls or broken fragments, but here were complete, bound volumes with a durability that seemed almost intentional. The lead pages, though corroded by time, held their shape, their inscriptions protected by the metal's resistance to decay. Some inscriptions appeared to depict figures resembling early Christian iconography, while others bore mysterious sequences of letters and symbols, hinting at a language or cipher lost to history. The most tantalizing detail: a handful of the codices were sealed shut, their contents deliberately hidden, as if guarding secrets too explosive to expose. But with every extraordinary claim comes fierce scrutiny. Almost immediately, experts divided into opposing camps. Some archaeologists pointed to the codices' unusual binding techniques, ring-shaped hinges that mirrored ancient Roman methods, as evidence of authenticity. Others dismissed them as clever forgeries, noting inconsistencies in the script and the lack of any known historical precedent for lead-bound religious texts. Adding fuel to the fire, the codices emerged not from a controlled excavation, but from the shadowy world of antiquities trafficking, their exact origins muddied by hearsay and competing claims. The debate reached a fever pitch when initial metallurgical tests suggested the lead could indeed be ancient, possibly dating back 2,000 years. Yet skeptics countered that age alone proved nothing. Modern forgers could easily source old materials. What no one could deny was the sheer audacity of the artifacts. Whether genuine or fake, the Jordan Lead Codices forced the world to confront a haunting question. If these were forgeries, why go to such elaborate lengths? And if they were real, what dangerous knowledge might they contain? The cave where they were found still guards its secrets, but one thing is certain: the story of their discovery is just the first thread in a much darker tapestry. The Jordan Lead Codices are unlike any other ancient artifacts ever uncovered, small but heavy, their weight betraying the unusual material used in their creation. Measuring roughly the size of a modern smartphone, each of these palm-sized books consists of bound lead sheets, their surfaces intricately etched with a mix of Hebrew script, cryptic symbols, and faint Christian imagery. The metal pages, though tarnished by centuries, still bear the delicate marks of their engraver's hand, suggesting painstaking craftsmanship. Some codices remain sealed, fused shut by rings of lead that loop through holes punched along their edges, an ancient form of binding that hints at hidden contents, meant to be opened only by those deemed worthy. At first glance, the symbols and script appear chaotic, a jumble of letters and shapes that don't quite match any known ancient alphabet. Yet, upon closer inspection, patterns emerge. Some pages display what scholars believe to be variations of Paleo-Hebrew, a script used in the first millennium before the Common Era, while others feature strange geometric designs, circles, stars, and what might be crude representations of temple architecture. Even more striking are the rare depictions of human-like figures, some with outstretched arms, reminiscent of early Christian iconography of the crucifixion. But these images are crude, almost hurried, as if their maker feared being caught in the act of recording them. The lead itself is another puzzle. Unlike brittle parchment or crumbling papyrus, the metal has preserved the etchings with surprising clarity, despite centuries of corrosion. The weight of the codices suggests they were never meant to be carried lightly, perhaps hidden or even ritually buried. The sealed rings add another layer of mystery. Were they meant to protect sacred knowledge, or were they a warning, keeping something dangerous locked away? The craftsmanship varies too. Some codices show precise, uniform markings, while others appear rushed, as if created under duress. What's undeniable is that these objects were made with purpose. The lead sheets were carefully cut, the symbols deliberately placed, and the bindings meticulously secured. Whether they hold divine revelations or elaborate deception, their very existence forces us to reconsider what we know about ancient religious texts. And with each new detail uncovered, the questions only multiply. Who went to such lengths to create these, and why choose lead, a material both durable and ominous as their medium? The answers may lie not just in the markings on the pages, but in the silent, heavy presence of the books themselves. The moment the Jordan Lead Codices surfaced, experts clashed over their legitimacy in a debate as heated as the desert sun where they were found. On one side stood those convinced these artifacts were authentic first-century relics, possibly even linked to the earliest followers of Jesus. Their argument hinged on metallurgical tests revealing the lead-matched alloys used in ancient Roman times, with corrosion patterns consistent with 2 millennia of burial. Some scholars pointed to the bindings' rusty metal rings fashioned in a style known from Roman-era notebooks, as evidence too precise for forgers to replicate. Even the mysterious symbols found parallels in rare Jewish mystical texts from the same period, suggesting a hidden thread of esoteric early Christian thought. But the skeptics struck back with equal force. They noted glaring red flags like the mix of Hebrew script, some letters crudely copied from much later periods, as if the forger consulted a flawed reference. The Christian imagery, too, raised eyebrows. While crucifixion-like figures appear, their postures and details stray wildly from known first-century art, blending anachronistic elements in ways no ancient artist would. Then came the most damning critique. Several linguists identified grammatical errors in the inscriptions, mistakes no native speaker of ancient Hebrew or Aramaic would make. The battleground expanded when forensic analysts stepped in. Advanced spectroscopy confirmed the lead was ancient, but skeptics countered that old materials mean nothing. Lead scavenged from Roman pipes or roofing could easily be melted down and reused. One team even claimed to spot traces of modern tools in the engravings, microscopic marks suggesting electric drills rather than hand chisels. Yet just as the forgery theory gained momentum, a bombshell emerged. A sealed codex, carefully opened under lab conditions, revealed layers of mineral deposits inside its pages, a telltale sign of centuries spent underground. The back and forth reveals more than just academic disagreement. It exposes the high-stakes world of biblical archaeology, where a single discovery can challenge entrenched beliefs. Authenticists argue forgers wouldn't painstakingly craft dozens of codices with such varied, intricate details. Debunkers fire back that the antiquities black market thrives on elaborate fakes, from the infamous Shroud of Turin to the James ossuary. Caught in the middle are the codices themselves, their mute metal pages withholding the ultimate verdict. Whether sacred texts or sophisticated hoax, they've already achieved one thing: proving that even in our age of science, the past can still outwit the present. Among the most vocal defenders of the Jordan Lead Codices stands David Elkington, a British author and researcher whose name has become inseparable from the controversy. Elkington first encountered the codices in 2009, and what he saw convinced him immediately. These weren't just ancient artifacts, but potentially the most significant Christian relics ever discovered. His theory was bold, bordering on explosive. He argued the codices were created by a group of early Jewish Christians, possibly even contemporaries of Jesus, hiding their beliefs from Roman persecution. The symbols, he claimed, weren't random scribbles but a coded language maps to sacred sites, encrypted parables, even lost hymns. Elkington's passion was undeniable. He traveled across the Middle East, tracking down leads, interviewing Bedouin traders, and poring over every groove in the lead pages. He became the codices' most public advocate, appearing in documentaries and penning books that painted them as a bridge between Judaism and early Christianity. Some of his claims stretched the imagination: connections to King Herod's temple, whispers of a hidden messianic lineage, even hints that the codices might reference the crucifixion in ways no other ancient text dared. To believers, Elkington was a modern-day Indiana Jones, unearthing truths the establishment refused to acknowledge. But academia pushed back hard. Scholars dismissed his interpretations as speculative at best, reckless at worst. They pointed out glaring gaps. No peer-reviewed studies supported his translations, and his methods relied heavily on intuitive leaps rather than linguistic rigor. The backlash was swift and brutal. Museums refused to exhibit the codices, universities barred him from presenting at conferences, and former allies distanced themselves, fearing professional ruin by association. Even sympathetic archaeologists urged caution, warning that without verifiable evidence, the codices risked becoming another footnote in the long history of biblical hoaxes. Yet Elkington doubled down. He accused the academic world of closed-mindedness, of protecting dogmas that couldn't withstand scrutiny. The tighter the scholarly noose became, the more he framed himself as a truth-teller silenced by vested interests. The irony: his fervor inadvertently fueled skepticism. The louder he proclaimed the codices' authenticity, the more they were dismissed as fodder for conspiracy theories rather than serious study. What's undeniable is Elkington's role in the saga. Without his relentless campaigning, the codices might have vanished into the black market, forgotten. But his crusade also exposed a rift in how history is uncovered, and who gets to decide what's real. Whether visionary or zealot, his legacy is inextricably tied to those cryptic lead pages, a reminder that sometimes the most controversial discoveries aren't just about the past, but about who controls the narrative. Among the most tantalizing theories surrounding the Jordan Lead Codices is the possibility that they preserve fragments of long-lost Christian teachings whispered from the shadows of the 1st century. Some researchers point to the recurring symbols etched into the lead pages, menorahs standing beside what appear to be crosses, figures with arms outstretched like the crucified Christ, and cryptic sequences of letters resembling early Aramaic prayers. These visual clues suggest a community straddling two worlds, Jewish in tradition yet vibrating with the revolutionary fervor of the early Jesus movement. The menorah, an ancient Jewish emblem of divine light, appears alongside symbols that evoke Christian motifs, hinting at a time when the lines between Judaism and the fledgling Christian faith were still blurred. One particularly striking image shows a figure near what might be a tree or a cross, surrounded by symbols resembling stars, a possible allusion to messianic prophecies or even the crucifixion. But here's where it gets complicated. These depictions are raw, almost primal in their simplicity, lacking the polished artistry of later Christian iconography. If authentic, they could represent some of the earliest known visual references to Jesus' followers, carved in secret by those who feared Roman persecution. Scholars who support this theory argue that the codices might belong to a sect of Jewish Christians, a group largely erased from history after the rise of Orthodox Christianity. These believers, sometimes called Nazarenes or Ebionites, clung to Jewish law while revering Jesus as a prophet or Messiah. Their writings were suppressed, their voices silenced until now. Could the Lead Codices be their hidden legacy? The sealed books in this reading take on a darker significance. They weren't just storing knowledge, they were burying it, protecting explosive truths from destruction. Yet skeptics counter that the imagery is too ambiguous to bear such weight. The so-called crosses might be nothing more than decorative marks or astrological symbols. The menorahs, while undeniably Jewish, were common motifs in ancient art and don't necessarily point to a Christian connection. And then there's the glaring absence of any clear reference to Jesus, Mary, or the apostles. No names, no parables, no echoes of the Gospels. If these were truly early Christian texts, why hide them in code without a single decipherable clue to their meaning? The debate circles back to one unsettling question. What if both sides are partly right? The codices may not contain lost gospels, but they could still reflect the chaotic, experimental spirituality of the 1st century, when dozens of sects scrambled to interpret the seismic shifts of their time. Whether forged or genuine, they force us to confront how little we truly know about the birth of Christianity, and how much history might still lie buried, waiting for the right hand to brush away the dust. The symbols carved into the Jordan Lead Codices aren't just random scratches, they're a labyrinth of intentional markings that have resisted easy translation from the moment they were discovered. Some resemble distorted Hebrew letters, their shapes twisted as if written in haste or coded to evade comprehension. Others bear no resemblance to any known alphabet, forming geometric clusters that look more like star maps than language. One recurring motif appears to depict a 7-branched menorah, its base intersecting with a vertical line that some interpret as a cross, while others see nothing more than overlapping design elements. The ambiguity is the point. Whoever created these symbols wanted them to mean something, but only to those with the key. Comparisons to other ancient ciphers are inevitable. The Voynich manuscript, that infamous 15th century puzzle book filled with undecipherable script and bizarre botanical illustrations, shares the same aura of deliberate secrecy. Both artifacts taunt modern scholars with the same maddening question: is this a sophisticated cipher protecting profound knowledge, or an elaborate ruse designed to mimic the appearance of one? Unlike the Voynich, however, the Codices symbols occasionally flirt with legibility. A few sequences loosely match Paleo-Hebrew, the script used before the Babylonian exile, while others echo Aramaic magical incantations from the same era. But just as patterns seem to emerge, they dissolve into chaos, leaving linguists grasping at fragments. Theories about their purpose spiral in wild directions. Some researchers propose they're cryptographic, using a substitution cipher where familiar letters are swapped for obscure symbols, a technique known in ancient Jewish mystical traditions. Others argue they're esoteric diagrams encoding sacred geometry or hidden temple layouts. The most controversial interpretation suggests they're apocalyptic in nature, sketching prophecies too dangerous to write plainly. A handful of fringe scholars even see parallels to ancient metallurgical recipes, believing the lead itself was chosen not just for durability, but as part of a ritual aligning text and material. Yet skepticism lingers like a shadow. If these symbols hold profound meaning, why are they so sloppily executed in places? Why mix recognizable letters with nonsensical squiggles? Modern forgers often overcomplicate their work, cramming in excess ancient details to seem authentic. The codices walk this tightrope, just coherent enough to intrigue, just erratic enough to defy confirmation. Whether sacred code or shrewd fabrication, their symbols have achieved one unintended effect, mirroring the very human instinct to hide truth in plain sight, leaving future generations to sift through the echoes of meaning. From the moment the Jordan Lead Codices surfaced, whispers swirled that forces within the Vatican had taken a keen and uneasy interest in their contents. The idea isn't entirely baseless. History is littered with examples of religious institutions suppressing texts that challenge orthodoxy, from the Gnostic Gospels buried at Nag Hammadi to the centuries of censorship surrounding apocalyptic writings. So when reports surfaced that high-ranking church officials had quietly examined the codices, speculation exploded. Were they authenticating the artifacts or ensuring they never saw the light of day? The Vatican's alleged involvement first gained traction when David Elkington claimed unnamed sources within the Holy See had confirmed the codices' significance. According to him, certain factions recognized them as genuine early Christian relics, potentially containing teachings deemed heretical by the early church, sayings of Jesus omitted from the canonical Gospels, alternate accounts of the resurrection, or even evidence of a surviving messianic bloodline. The implication was explosive. If true, these texts could upend centuries of doctrine. But when pressed for evidence, Elkington provided no documents, no on-the-record statements, just shadowy assertions that Vatican archivists were deeply concerned. Skeptics pounced. Without concrete proof, the narrative felt less like scholarship and more like a recycled conspiracy, echoing Dan Brown novels more than historical research. Experts in Catholic history pointed out that the Vatican's vast archives have long been open to credentialed researchers, even for controversial texts like the infamous Gospel of Judas. Why would they suppress these codices specifically? Others noted that if the Church truly feared the books, their strategy made little sense. Why not publicly denounce them as forgeries, as they'd done with other disputed artifacts? Yet the rumors persisted, fueled by odd coincidences. Shortly after the codices' discovery, Jordanian authorities abruptly declared them national treasures, banning their export, a move some interpreted as pressure from external powers. Then there was the curious case of a Spanish priest who allegedly examined the books and warned they contained dangerous ideas, only to retract his statement days later. The most chilling claim came from a now-deleted blog post by an antiquities dealer who swore he'd been offered a fortune to smuggle the codices to Rome. The post vanished within hours. Separating fact from fiction reveals a more nuanced truth. The Vatican, like any millennia-old institution, has factions. Some clerics undoubtedly viewed the codices with skepticism, while others may have privately hoped they'd validate certain theological positions. What's undeniable is this: whether by design or accident, the codices became a Rorschach test. To believers, every bureaucratic delay in their study, every muted response from Rome was proof of a cover-up. To critics, it was all smoke and mirrors, a deliberate distraction from the artifact's glaring inconsistencies. The real story here isn't about suppression. It's about the power of mystery to expose our deepest biases. For every person convinced the Vatican hid the codices to protect its authority, there's another just as certain they're forgeries meant to undermine faith. Between them lies the unsettling possibility that the truth, like the lead pages themselves, remains sealed, waiting for someone with the patience and the courage to pry it open. The lead pages of the Jordan Lead Codices didn't just whisper their secrets, they had to be interrogated under the cold, unblinking gaze of modern science. Metallurgical tests became the first battlefield in the war over authenticity. When researchers subjected the codices to X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy, the results were startling. The lead's chemical signature matched known alloys from the Roman Empire, with trace elements like silver and antimony appearing in proportions consistent with first-century mining practices. Even more compelling were the corrosion patterns, delicate layers of oxidation that formed over centuries, impossible to replicate artificially without leaving telltale signs of modern tampering. One lab report noted how the lead had developed a specific crystalline structure called hydrostracite, a patina that only forms naturally after prolonged exposure to damp, mineral-rich soil. But just as the pro-authenticity camp rallied behind these findings, skeptics fired back with a devastating counterpoint. Ancient materials don't guarantee ancient craftsmanship. Lead is virtually indestructible, and forgers have long scavenged Roman-era metal from ruins, melting it down to create ancient artifacts. A forensic metallurgist in Zurich made waves by demonstrating how a skilled artisan could age new lead sheets with acidic solutions, mimicking centuries of corrosion in weeks. Then came the microscopic analysis. High-resolution imaging revealed minuscule tool marks on some codices, fine striations suggesting rotary cutting instruments, not the hand chisels of antiquity. The debate grew even murkier when one team claimed to detect traces of modern lubricants embedded in the metal, though these results were later disputed. Linguistic analysis proved equally divisive. Paleographers, experts in ancient writing systems, pored over the codices' symbols, searching for clues in every stroke. Some sequences bore a vague resemblance to Paleo-Hebrew, but with glaring inconsistencies. Letters were inverted or mashed together in ways no literate scribe would commit. A few symbols matched Aramaic magical amulets from the same period, but others defied all known alphabets, veering into pure abstraction. The most damning critique came from a Cambridge linguist who identified what he called anachronistic slips, symbols that only emerged in medieval Kabbalistic texts, centuries after the codices were supposedly created. Like a forger accidentally painting a wristwatch into a Renaissance portrait, these errors hinted at a modern hand, yet the mystery refused to surrender. One sealed codex, carefully opened in a controlled environment, revealed an internal corrosion pattern that stunned researchers. The layers of oxidation between its pages mirrored the external wear, suggesting the book had been sealed for millennia. This wasn't just surface aging, it was degradation that penetrated the core, a fingerprint of time no forger could feasibly fake. Even skeptics paused at this finding, admitting it complicated the forgery narrative. The conflicting data created a paradox. The lead might be ancient, but were the engravings? The symbols might be gibberish, but why go to such lengths to inscribe them? Every scientific test seemed to deepen the enigma rather than solve it, leaving us with a haunting realization. In the shadowy realm of biblical antiquities, even the most advanced tools can't always separate truth from deception. And perhaps that's exactly what the Codices creators intended. The discovery of ancient texts hidden in caves inevitably draws comparisons to history's most famous biblical find, the Dead Sea Scrolls. Unearthed between 1947 and 1956 in the cliffs near Qumran, these 2,000-year-old parchment and papyrus scrolls revolutionized our understanding of early Judaism and the roots of Christianity. Like the Jordan Lead Codices, they were stumbled upon by chance by Bedouin shepherds, not treasure hunters, and their contents were equally enigmatic at first glance. But that's where the parallels end. While the Dead Sea Scrolls were painstakingly preserved in clay jars shielded from moisture, the Lead Codices were found exposed to the elements, their metal pages fused together by corrosion. The differences in material tell a deeper story. The scrolls were written on organic materials, parchment, papyrus, even copper, with ink that could be chemically analyzed. Scholars could carbon date the parchment, study the ink's composition, and compare handwriting styles across hundreds of fragments. The codices, by contrast, offer no such clarity. Lead doesn't decay like parchment, but it also can't be carbon dated, and engravings leave no ink traces to analyze. Even worse, Lead's malleability means symbols could theoretically be added or altered long after the books were first cast. Without the ability to pinpoint when the markings were made, researchers are left debating whether they're staring at ancient scripture or an elaborate modern fabrication. Content is another glaring divergence. The Dead Sea Scrolls include copies of Hebrew scriptures, sectarian hymns, and detailed community rules, texts that, while mysterious, fit into known historical frameworks. The Codices, with their cryptic symbols and possible Christian imagery, refuse to slot neatly into any established tradition. Some symbols resemble Jewish mysticism, others early Christian art, but none form coherent passages like the scroll's legible columns of Hebrew and Aramaic. This ambiguity fuels the skepticism. Where the scrolls could be cross-referenced with other ancient texts, the codices stand alone, their meaning locked behind layers of speculation. Perhaps the most telling contrast lies in their reception. The Dead Sea Scrolls, after initial controversies, were embraced by scholars worldwide, their authenticity cemented by decades of peer-reviewed study. The codices, meanwhile, remain trapped in limbo, dismissed by many institutions yet championed by vocal minorities. The scrolls benefited from controlled excavations and immediate academic involvement, while the codices emerged through the murky antiquities trade, their provenance muddied by competing claims. What does this split reveal? It's a lesson in how history validates its treasures. The scrolls were excavated with transparency, their context documented, their secrets unveiled methodically. The codices, shrouded in secrecy and spectacle, invite doubt at every turn. Whether by accident or design, their story mirrors the very divide they've come to represent between faith and evidence, between what we long to believe and what we can prove. And until that gap closes, their truth may remain as heavy and impenetrable as the lead that binds them. For every tantalizing clue hinting at the Jordan Lead Codice's ancient origins, there's an equally compelling piece of evidence pointing to a modern forgery. One of the most damning arguments comes from the script itself, symbols that seem to defy time. Paleographers, specialists in ancient writing systems, noted glaring inconsistencies in the letter forms. Some characters resembled Paleo-Hebrew, a script used before the Babylonian exile, but others appeared to borrow from much later periods, even mixing in symbols that wouldn't emerge until medieval Jewish mysticism. It's as if someone pieced together a collage of ancient-looking marks without understanding their historical context, like a forger accidentally stitching a zipper into a Roman toga. Then there's the matter of tool marks. High-resolution imaging revealed microscopic striations on the lead surface's fine, parallel grooves that suggest the use of rotary cutting tools, not the hand chisels available in the 1st century. Modern engraving techniques often leave these telltale traces, a detail no ancient artisan could have produced. Even more damning, traces of contemporary lubricants were allegedly detected in some grooves, though these findings remain hotly disputed. Metallurgists also highlighted oddities in the corrosion patterns. While the lead itself is undoubtedly ancient, certain areas showed signs of artificial aging, chemical pitting inconsistent with natural underground decay, as if someone had accelerated time with acidic solutions to mimic centuries of wear. The plot thickened when authorities in the Middle East arrested a known antiquities forger operating in the same region where the codices surfaced. This individual had a history of producing fake relics, from ancient coins to forged biblical-era inscriptions, often using scavenged materials to lend authenticity. While no direct link to the codices was proven, the arrest sent shockwaves through the academic community, reinforcing suspicions that these artifacts might be part of a sophisticated hoax. The forger's methods eerily mirrored the codices' quirks, using genuine ancient materials to craft deceptive new creations, exploiting the blind spots of modern testing. Yet perhaps the most revealing clue lies in the codices' very design. Bound books or codices were rare in the 1st century, especially among Jewish communities who predominantly used scrolls. While early Christians did adopt the codex format, the complex ring bindings on the lead books are unprecedented in the archaeological record. It's a detail that feels more like artistic license than historical practice, as if the creator prioritized dramatic flair over accuracy. Combine this with the anachronistic imagery, cross-like shapes that predate standardized Christian iconography by centuries, and the evidence tilts heavily toward fabrication. But here's the twist: even if the codices are forgeries, their craftsmanship demands respect. The labor involved casting lead sheets, meticulously engraving symbols, aging them convincingly, suggests more than a quick scam. It hints at a deeper motive, perhaps an attempt to reshape religious narratives or exploit the lucrative market for biblical artifacts. Whether as a hoax or a misguided art project, the codices have achieved one unintended effect: holding a mirror to our own desperation for discovery, proving that sometimes the most enduring mysteries aren't ancient at all, they're the ones we create ourselves. The moment whispers of the Jordan Lead Codices reached the underground antiquities market, their price tag soared into the realm of myth. Some dealers quietly estimated their collective worth could surpass $20 million if authenticated. That staggering figure alone explains why these cryptic lead books became magnets for smugglers, forgers, and collectors willing to gamble on their legitimacy. In the shadowy economy of biblical relics, where a single scrap of parchment attributed to a disciple can fetch 7 figures, the codices represented the ultimate high-stakes prize, artifacts that could rewrite religious history or vanish into a billionaire's private vault without ever being studied. The black market's obsession with the codices isn't just about their potential age, it's about narrative. Provenance transforms objects into icons, and nothing commands higher prices than relics tied to the dawn of Christianity. A 2,000-year-old nail is just a nail until someone claims it's from the true cross. The codices, with their tantalizing mix of Hebrew script and Christian-esque imagery, dangled the possibility of a direct link to Jesus' earliest followers. For collectors, that connection isn't merely valuable, it's transcendent. One Jordanian antiquities broker, speaking on condition of anonymity, described how offers poured in from 3 continents within weeks of the discovery. Men with private jets, he said, offered blank checks if we could prove they mentioned the Messiah. But where there's desperation, there's deception. The same feverish demand that drove the codices' value also created irresistible incentives for forgery. Faking biblical artifacts is a cottage industry across the Middle East, with workshops in places like Gaza and East Jerusalem producing convincing replicas of everything from Roman coins to Dead Sea Scroll fragments. The codices presented a unique opportunity. Their lead construction made them easier to age artificially than fragile parchment, and their mysterious symbols defied quick verification. A skilled forger could exploit the ambiguity, counting on scholars' debates to muddy the waters long enough to secure a sale. Worse yet, the codices' murky origins made them perfect targets for theft. Unlike museum pieces with documented histories, these artifacts emerged from the undocumented underbelly of treasure hunting. Jordanian officials admitted that at least 24 codices were likely smuggled out of the country before authorities intervened, their whereabouts now unknown. Interpol databases list them among the world's most sought-after stolen antiquities, but recovering them is nearly impossible once they've entered private collections. The few that remain under lock and key in Jordan are guarded like crown jewels, accessible only to researchers vetted by the government. What's often overlooked in the frenzy over their monetary value is the cultural cost. If genuine, every codex lost to the black market is a piece of history silenced, a voice from the ancient world that might never be heard. If fake, their proliferation only deepens the skepticism that haunts legitimate archaeology, making it harder for true discoveries to gain traction. The codices, whether sacred or sham, hold up a mirror to our obsession with ownership over understanding, revealing an uncomfortable truth. Sometimes the most valuable things are the ones we're least willing to share. If the Jordan Lead Codices are authentic, they could shatter long-held assumptions about early Christianity's uniformity, revealing a far more fractured and diverse spiritual landscape than traditional narratives suggest. Imagine a time when the movement following Jesus wasn't a single, cohesive faith but a constellation of competing sects, each interpreting his teachings in radically different ways. The codices, with their cryptic symbols and possible Jewish-Christian hybrid imagery, might represent one of these lost strands, a group that blended messianic hope with esoteric practices, their beliefs deemed too dangerous or heretical to survive. Parallels to the Nag Hammadi library are impossible to ignore. Discovered in 1945 in Egypt, those ancient Coptic texts unveiled a world where Gnostic Christians viewed salvation not through sacrifice but through secret knowledge gnosis. Like the Lead Codices, they were hidden away, likely to protect them from destruction by Orthodox authorities. If genuine, the Jordan books could be another piece of that suppressed puzzle, offering glimpses of early believers who saw Jesus not as a divine savior in the later Pauline sense, but as a mystical teacher or even a revolutionary prophet within Judaism. The menorahs alongside cross-like symbols might then represent a bridge between traditions, a sect that refused to choose between its Jewish roots and its messianic fervor. But the implications go deeper. The very material of the codices, lead, not parchment, suggests a deliberate choice. Lead was associated with both durability and secrecy in the ancient world, used for cursed tablets and hidden inscriptions. If these books were meant to endure persecution, their metal pages would have withstood fires and raids that destroyed organic texts. Their sealed bindings take on new meaning, not just protecting sacred knowledge, but perhaps concealing doctrines that clashed with the emerging orthodoxy of the 2nd and 3rd centuries. Could they contain alternate accounts of Jesus' life, rituals, or prophecies that early church leaders sought to erase? Scholars point to groups like the Ebionites, Jewish Christians who rejected Paul's teachings and adhered to Mosaic law while revering Jesus as a mortal prophet. Or the Elchasates, who blended Christian, Jewish, and Zoroastrian elements into a theology later condemned as heresy. The codices' symbolism, if deciphered, might place them squarely in these marginalized movements, offering first-hand evidence of beliefs we've only known through the dismissive writings of their opponents. Yet here's the haunting question: if these books are genuine, why does no historical record mention them? Early church fathers meticulously catalogued heretical texts to refute them. The silence is deafening, unless, of course, the codices were so effectively suppressed that even their existence was erased, a possibility that forces us to confront how much of early Christianity's story remains unwritten, buried not in caves but in the deliberate gaps of history. Whether truth or forgery, they've already done their work, exposing how fragile our grasp of the past really is, and how quickly the victor's version becomes the only one we know. From the moment the Jordan Lead Codices emerged from that desert cave, their numbers began to dwindle, not from decay but from human hands. Of the estimated 70 to 100 codices originally discovered, fewer than 20 remain officially accounted for in Jordan's national archives. The rest vanished. Some slipped into the shadows of the black market, spirited across borders in diplomatic pouches, or tucked into the luggage of wealthy collectors. Others may have been broken apart, their lead pages sold piecemeal to buyers who cared more about profit than history. The trail goes cold in private vaults from Geneva to Dubai, where artifacts of dubious provenance gather dust behind layers of shell companies and legal loopholes. The disappearance triggered a firestorm of legal battles, with the Jordanian government declaring the Codices national treasures and demanding their return. Their claim rests on cultural heritage laws that forbid the export of antiquities without state permission, laws routinely flouted by smugglers. In 2011, Jordan filed a lawsuit against a private collector in Israel, alleging he possessed stolen codices. The case became a maze of competing narratives. The collector insisted he'd acquired them legally from a Bedouin trader. Jordan produced witnesses who swore the artifacts had been looted from a protected archaeological site. For years, the dispute languished in court, a microcosm of the wider tensions over cultural patrimony in the Middle East, where every shovel of dirt unearthed seems to spark another ownership feud. Complicating matters, some codices surfaced in the United Kingdom, where a different legal quagmire awaited. British law requires hard evidence to seize suspected stolen artifacts, evidence nearly impossible to obtain when dealing with objects ripped from the ground without documentation. Jordan's ambassador accused antiquities dealers of art trafficking dressed as academia, arguing that auction houses turned a blind eye to shady provenance as long as the checks cleared. One London-based dealer, speaking anonymously, admitted the trade thrives on ambiguity. Nobody asks how something got here, they only ask if it can stay. Meanwhile, whispers persist of a shadowy bidding war among evangelical collectors in the American South, where biblical relics command near religious reverence. One report, never verified, described a Texas megachurch leader offering $3 million for a single codex allegedly containing references to Jesus' burial. Whether rumor or fact, such stories underscore the toxic blend of faith, greed, and nationalism that fuels the trade. Even UNESCO intervened, adding the codices to its red list of endangered cultural artifacts, a symbolic gesture with little power to reclaim what's already gone. The legal chaos exposes a bitter truth. In the world of antiquities, possession isn't just 9/10 of the law, it's the only law that matters. Without airtight documentation, even the most significant discoveries risk becoming pawns in a game where money trumps truth. And as lawsuits drag on, the codices themselves remain in limbo, their secrets locked away not by lead bindings but by human avarice, the real tragedy. Whether ancient or fake, their greatest value may lie not in what they reveal, but in what they've come to represent, a system where history is forever for sale. The Bedouin treasure hunter who first stumbled upon the Jordan Lead Codices spoke in hushed tones when describing that fateful day in the caves. The air smelled like wet metal, he recalled, his hands tracing the shape of the books in the dust. They were stacked like offerings, blackened by time but heavy, so heavy as if they wanted to stay buried. His account paints a vivid picture, a hidden chamber untouched for centuries, the codices arranged with deliberate care. Yet when pressed for details, his story wavers. He couldn't recall the exact depth of the cave or whether the books were wrapped in cloth, most puzzling. He initially claimed to have found them alone, but later mentioned a cousin waiting outside, a man who, when tracked down, swore he'd never been to that hillside. Then there's the Jordanian antiquities dealer who first recognized the codices' potential value. In early interviews, he described them as glowing with strange energy, insisting their symbols pulsed under candlelight. But under oath during the repatriation hearings, he dismissed the claim as a metaphor for their historical importance. His financial records tell yet another story, texts to an associate referencing a lead shipment months before the codices went public. Was he orchestrating a sting to catch smugglers or planting evidence to fabricate provenance? Even the archaeologists who first handled the artifacts gave conflicting testimonies. One insisted the cave's entrance had been sealed with a stone matching first-century masonry techniques. Another, visiting the same site weeks later, found no such stone, just loose shale scattered by recent digging. Most damning are the lab technicians who analyzed the codices. Two swore they detected traces of modern polishing compounds between the lead sheets, but their reports vanished from the official record, replaced by sanitized versions omitting the discrepancy. The human drama surrounding these artifacts rivals their material mysteries. A village elder near the discovery site spun tales of a local legend, a cursed library hidden by fleeing heretics. Yet historians found no trace of such folklore in regional archives. Then came the anonymous YouTube video, grainy footage of a man in a dimly lit room, whispering that the codices were never meant to be found, before the feed cut abruptly. The uploader's account was deleted within hours. These inconsistencies do more than cast doubt. They weave a tapestry of half-truths where every witness seems to be guarding secrets. Whether protecting a hoax, covering up looting, or genuinely misremembering under pressure, their stories have become inseparable from the codices themselves. And in that space between memory and evidence, the mystery grows thicker, whispering that sometimes the most revealing artifacts aren't made of lead, but of the lies we wrap around them. The missing Jordan Lead Codices could be anywhere, locked in a billionaire's climate-controlled vault, buried in the basement of a shadowy antiquities dealer, or even displayed as a macabre trophy in some private collection where money erases questions of provenance. One persistent rumor places a handful of them in Switzerland, hidden among the priceless artworks and gold bars of a Zurich freeport, those tax-neutral warehouses where the ultra-wealthy store treasures away from prying eyes. These facilities specialize in discretion, their contents known only to their owners and the numbered accounts that paid for them. A whistleblower from the industry once described entire rooms filled with unregistered artifacts, their origins scrubbed clean by layers of shell companies. If the codices are there, they may never resurface. Other leads point east. In 2014, an anonymous tipster claimed to have seen 3 lead books matching the codice's description in a Dubai penthouse, displayed behind bulletproof glass alongside pre-Islamic idols. The collector, allegedly a Russian oligarch with a taste for forbidden relics, reportedly bragged about owning books that could make the Vatican tremble. The story goes unverified, but it fits a pattern. Dubai's lax antiquities laws and booming luxury market have made it a haven for high-end smuggling, where provenance is an afterthought and confidentiality is guaranteed. Then there's the darker possibility that some codices were dismantled, their lead pages melted down or sold piecemeal to collectors who preferred fragments over scrutiny. In 2016, a Spanish archaeologist examined a scrap of metal in a Madrid auction catalogue, its surface etched with symbols eerily similar to those on the Jordan books. Before he could alert authorities, the listing vanished. Fragmentation is a trafficker's oldest trick. Break a controversial artifact into harmless-looking pieces, and even experts might miss the bigger picture. Most chilling are the whispers of underground networks trading not in artifacts but in knowledge. A monk in Cyprus once confided to a researcher that a sealed codex had been smuggled into a monastery on Mount Athos, where it was studied in secret by a sect of ascetics convinced it held apocalyptic prophecies. The claim is impossible to verify. Mount Athos permits no female visitors, and its libraries are off-limits to outsiders. But if true, it suggests the codices aren't just commodities. To some, they might be weapons or revelations too dangerous for the light of day. The truth is, we may never know. In the world of stolen antiquities, objects don't just disappear, they become ghosts haunting the edges of auctions, whispered about in dealers' back rooms, their stories rewritten with every transaction. And somewhere, in a vault or a shrine or a locked drawer, the missing codices wait, their lead pages still guarding secrets, or perhaps just the illusion of them. Modern technology offered a glimmer of hope where traditional scholarship had hit a wall. Could artificial intelligence crack the code of the Jordan Lead Codices? In 2019, a team of data scientists partnered with archaeologists to train machine learning algorithms on ancient Near Eastern scripts, flooding the system with thousands of examples of Paleo-Hebrew, Aramaic, and early Greek inscriptions. The goal was audacious: teach the AI to recognize patterns human eyes might miss, hoping it could decipher the codices' jumble of symbols. Initial results seemed promising. The software detected recurring clusters that might represent names or sacred terms. But without a Rosetta Stone-like bilingual key to anchor the translations, even the most advanced algorithms could only guess at meanings, churning out contradictory interpretations that ranged from apocalyptic prophecies to mundane tax records. Spectral imaging brought another breakthrough. By bombarding the lead pages with different wavelengths of light, researchers hoped to uncover faded or erased markings invisible to the naked eye. Multispectral scans did reveal subtle indentations, ghostly impressions suggesting some symbols had been scraped away and re-engraved, hinting at revisions or censorship. But the technique hit a brutal limitation. Lead's reflectivity distorted the scans, creating false positives that sent linguists chasing phantom letters. The same durability that preserved the codices now thwarted efforts to peer deeper. The greatest obstacle, though, wasn't technological, it was political. With most codices either locked in Jordan state vaults or vanished into private collections, researchers had to work from low-resolution photographs or smuggled scans of dubious accuracy. One team's request to examine the artifacts under controlled conditions was denied for national heritage protection, while a leaked email revealed that a billionaire collector who owned 2 codices refused access unless granted co-authorship on any findings. The irony stung. The very tools that could solve the mystery were being held hostage by the same forces of secrecy and ownership that had buried the codices in the first place. Perhaps the most revealing failure came from an unexpected quarter crowdsourcing. When high-res images of one codex were briefly posted online, amateur codebreakers flooded forums with theories, comparing the symbols to everything from Minoan linear script to medieval alchemical ciphers. The chaos that followed a cacophony of competing translations proved something unsettling. Without physical access to the artifacts, even the brightest minds were just shouting into the dark. The codices seemed to mock modern arrogance, their secrets remaining just out of reach, as if their ancient creators had anticipated our tools and built their defenses accordingly. In the end, the technological siege only deepened the enigma. Every scanner, algorithm, and database confirmed one brutal truth: some doors won't open, no matter how hard we knock. And behind them, the codices wait patient, heavy, silent, knowing time is on their side. The Jordan Lead Codices aren't alone in their mystery. They join a long, shadowy tradition of artifacts that tease us with the possibility of hidden religious knowledge. Take the Copper Scroll, one of the Dead Sea Scrolls discovered in the caves of Qumran. Unlike its parchment companions inscribed with biblical texts, this scroll was hammered from metal, its surface etched with a cryptic inventory of gold and silver treasures supposedly hidden across the Judean wilderness. The parallels are striking. Both the Copper Scroll and the Lead Codices were crafted from durable metals, as if their creators wanted them to outlast parchment and time itself. Both use language that resists easy translation, mixing Hebrew with obscure references only insiders would understand. And both have sparked wild theories. Are they literal treasure maps or allegorical guides to spiritual riches? The Copper Scroll's treasures have never been found, leaving scholars to wonder, was it a factual record or a symbolic text meant to be read between the lines? The Lead Codices whisper the same haunting question. Then there's the Ark of the Covenant, the legendary gold-clad chest said to hold the stone tablets of the Ten Commandments. Like the Codices, its story is wrapped in layers of divine awe and earthly intrigue. Ancient texts describe it as a conduit of God's power, so potent that touching it meant death. But after the Babylonian conquest of Jerusalem in the 6th century before the Common Era, the Ark vanishes from history. Some say it was hidden beneath the Temple Mount, others that it was smuggled to Ethiopia, where it's supposedly guarded to this day. The Lead Codices echo this pattern, artifacts of immense spiritual weight, their whereabouts and meanings obscured by time and human hands. Both invite us to ask, why go to such lengths to hide something unless it held power too dangerous to leave unguarded? Even older enigmas like the Antikythera mechanism, that ancient Greek computer found in a shipwreck, share this aura of lost wisdom. A device of staggering complexity for its time, it tracked celestial movements with precision that wouldn't be matched for over 1,000 years. Like the Codices, it forces us to reconsider what ancient people truly knew, and how much knowledge has been erased by war, suppression, or sheer neglect. The difference is stark, though. The Antikythera mechanism is a feat of engineering, its purpose deciphered through patience and science. The Codices, by contrast, guard their secrets behind layers of possible deception, their very authenticity in doubt. What binds these mysteries together isn't just their age or their materials, it's the human impulse they reveal. We're drawn to artifacts that promise answers, that hint at truths too profound for ordinary text. The Copper Scroll taunts us with lost gold, the Ark with divine presence, the Codices with forbidden teachings. Each one becomes a mirror, reflecting our own longing for connection to something greater. And perhaps that's the real pattern here, not a trail of hidden knowledge, but the endless quest to find it, a quest that says more about us than the artifacts themselves. After all, the greatest mysteries aren't always in the objects, they're in why we can't look away. From shadowy caves to the glare of television screens, the Jordan Lead Codices didn't just captivate scholars, they became pop culture lightning rods. Almost overnight, documentaries scrambled to frame them as either holy grails or Hollywood-worthy hoaxes. One notorious TV special breathlessly billed them as the metal books that could rewrite the Bible, splicing dramatic reenactments of Bedouin treasure hunters with ominous voiceovers about suppressed Christian truths. Never mind that the show's expert analysis came from a self-proclaimed biblical detective with no academic credentials. Sensationalism won out, painting the Codices as forbidden relics guarded by shadowy Vatican operatives. A narrative straight out of a Dan Brown novel, complete with ominous music and shaky camera work. Then came the books, best-selling authors, some with genuine archaeological chops, others peddling conspiracy theories, churned out titles promising decrypted secrets of the Codices. A few responsibly acknowledged the raging scholarly debates, but many leaned hard into speculative territory. One particularly lurid cover depicted a glowing codex floating above Jerusalem, its pages radiating divine light. Inside, claims that the lead sheets contained everything from lost prophecies of Jesus to blueprints for Solomon's temple. The irony, many of these books hit shelves before metallurgists had even finished testing the artifacts, proving that in the race for attention, mystery often trumps facts. Conspiracy forums amplified the noise. Online, the Codices morphed into something mythic, proof of alien contact, repositories of Atlantean wisdom, even tools of a clandestine elite manipulating religious history. Reddit threads dissected grainy photos of the symbols, users decoding them into everything from end times predictions to ancient energy grids. The wilder the theory, the more traction it gained. This wasn't just speculation, it was alchemy, turning vague etchings on lead into whatever the audience wanted to believe. Yet amidst the hype, quieter voices fought for nuance. A handful of scholars appeared in interviews stressing the importance of methodical study over grand reveals. One archaeologist's measured podcast segment went viral for all the wrong reasons. Clips of her saying, "We simply don't know yet," were memed into oblivion, framed as proof of an academic cover-up. The public, it seemed, preferred bold lies to cautious truths. What does this frenzy reveal? That the codices are more than artifacts, they're mirrors, reflecting our hunger for narratives that thrill rather than educate. Every exaggerated headline, every clickbait thumbnail speaks to a deeper truth. In the age of viral content, the line between discovery and entertainment isn't just blurred, it's been melted down and recast, much like those cryptic lead pages themselves. Dr. Miriam Russo, an Oxford archaeologist specializing in ancient metallurgy, doesn't mince words when discussing the Jordan Lead Codices. They're compelling forgeries, she insists, her voice sharp with academic certainty. The mix of script styles alone should set off alarms. It's like finding a medieval knight wearing a wristwatch. She points to microscopic tool marks visible under magnification, grooves inconsistent with hand-carving methods from antiquity. For her, the debate isn't just academic, it's personal. Every hoax that gains traction erodes public trust in real archaeology. We're fighting for the integrity of the discipline. Yet even she hesitates when asked about the sealed codices. The internal corrosion patterns, those are harder to dismiss. I can't explain how a forger would replicate that. Across the ideological divide stands Father Elias Andrikos, a Greek Orthodox priest and theologian who spent years studying early Christian sects. Holding a replica codex in his weathered hands, he speaks softly, as if afraid to disturb something sacred. What if these are voices the Church silenced centuries ago? He traces the crude crucifixion-like figure with reverence. Early believers didn't all think alike. These could be remnants of a lost tribe, Jewish Christians who preserved teachings too radical for Rome. His eyes glint with something beyond scholarship, a fervor that borders on devotion. When pressed about authenticity concerns, he sighs, "Of course we must test them." But must we dismiss every mystery that challenges our assumptions? Then there's Roland Vassy, a Parisian antiquities collector whose broker deals for some of the world's most controversial artifacts. Leaning back in his leather chair, he laughs at the notion of absolute certainty. Authenticity is a spectrum, my friend. I've seen objects half as old with 10 times the skepticism. He flips through photographs of his private collection, pausing on a lead codex fragment. Does it matter if they're 1st century or 12th? Their value isn't in age, it's in the story they make people believe. His tone turns conspiratorial. The Vatican doesn't fear forgeries. They fear what happens if even one page turns out to be real. The emotional undercurrents here run deeper than academic disagreement. For archaeologists like Russo, it's about safeguarding truth from those who twist history for profit or dogma. For Father Elias, it's the tantalizing possibility of reclaiming a suppressed spiritual heritage. And for collectors like Vassy, it's the thrill of the game where perception often outweighs provenance. What unites them is the unshakable gravity of those small, heavy books, objects that force us to confront how desperately we want the past to speak and how willingly we might reshape its voice to fit our own longing. From the moment the Jordan Lead Codices entered the spotlight, Jordan's government launched a relentless campaign to reclaim them as national treasures, a fight that would expose the messy intersection of archaeology, politics, and cultural identity. The Ministry of Antiquities wasted no time declaring the artifacts part of Jordan's irreplaceable heritage, invoking a 2008 law that bans the export of antiquities without state approval. But legal possession and physical control proved to be two very different things. With codices already smuggled across borders and traded like contraband, Jordanian officials found themselves in a high-stakes game of diplomatic chess, where every move risked alienating allies or emboldening smugglers. The battle turned fiercely public in 2011, when Jordan filed a lawsuit against an Israeli antiquities dealer believed to be hoarding several codices in Tel Aviv. Court documents accused the dealer of trafficking looted artifacts, citing testimonies from Bedouin sources who placed the discovery site squarely within Jordanian territory. The dealer fired back, producing bills of sale claiming the books had been legally acquired decades earlier, a defense riddled with inconsistencies. What should have been a straightforward case devolved into a geopolitical standoff, with Israel's courts caught between Jordan's cultural sovereignty claims and the murky realities of the antiquities trade. For 3 years, the legal ping-pong dragged on, draining resources and patience, until a quiet out-of-court settlement returned a handful of codices to Amman, with no admission of wrongdoing. Behind the scenes, Jordan's diplomats faced even thornier challenges. Intelligence reports suggested codices had reached private collectors in Europe and the Gulf, hidden behind layers of shell companies and art trusts designed to obscure ownership. Prosecuting these cases required navigating foreign legal systems where possession often trumped provenance. In Switzerland, for instance, simply proving an artifact was stolen wasn't enough. Jordan had to demonstrate the current owner knew it was illicit when acquired, a near impossible bar. One frustrated official compared it to trying to arrest smoke, describing how leads would vanish the moment investigators got close. The struggle took a symbolic turn when Jordan partnered with UNESCO, adding the codices to their red list of endangered cultural artifacts, a move aimed at pressuring auction houses and museums to scrutinize suspicious lead artifacts. Yet the gesture highlighted a painful irony. The very institutions Jordan relied on for repatriation help were often complicit in the trade. A leaked email from a London auction house revealed staff joking about a hot lead collection matching the codice's description, with one consultant quipping, "No papers, no problems." Perhaps the most revealing twist came from within Jordan itself. As officials rallied international support, local archaeologists criticized the government for failing to secure excavation sites, leaving them vulnerable to looters. Satellite images showed fresh digging near the alleged Discovery Cave years after the codices surfaced evidence the black market hadn't moved on. The backlash forced Jordan's Antiquities Authority into an uncomfortable reckoning. Had their zeal to reclaim the codices distracted from protecting what remained in the ground? What began as a fight over metal books became a mirror for larger tensions between nationalism and globalization, between preservation and profit. Every repatriation victory, however small, came freighted with compromises. Every returned codex was a reminder of dozens still lost. And lurking beneath the legal jargon and diplomatic cables was a question neither laws nor treaties could fully answer. When history becomes a commodity, who gets to decide where it belongs? The saga of the Jordan Lead Codices took a dramatic turn in early 2024 when a team of Swiss researchers announced a breakthrough, or so they claimed. Using cutting-edge neutron tomography, a non-invasive scanning technique typically reserved for examining nuclear fuel rods, they peered inside one of the sealed codices without breaking its ancient bindings. The ghostly images revealed not text but something far stranger, intricate patterns resembling architectural blueprints, possibly of a temple or altar. The discovery sent shockwaves through archaeological circles. Were these designs symbolic representations of sacred spaces or literal guides meant to be reconstructed? The Swiss team cautiously suggested parallels to descriptions of Herod's temple in Jerusalem, but within hours, critics pounced. One Israeli archaeologist pointed out that the proportions matched no known first-century structure, calling it a fantasy collage of ancient motifs. Meanwhile, in Jordan, a long-dormant legal case suddenly reignited. The High Court of Amman ruled in March 2024 that all codices held in private collections must undergo mandatory forensic testing to establish authenticity, a decision seen as a direct challenge to wealthy owners who'd refused access for years. The ruling came with teeth. Failure to comply would result in automatic confiscation. Almost immediately, 3 previously unknown codices surfaced in Lebanon, anonymously donated to a Beirut museum after the collector developed ethical concerns. Initial scans showed one contained a near-identical symbol sequence to a codex in Jordan's national collection, suggesting they might be part of a larger set. But the most explosive development emerged from an unexpected source, a graduate student in Barcelona. While digitizing fragments of medieval Kabbalistic manuscripts, she noticed a peculiar symbol matching one from the Codices. Further digging revealed it wasn't just a coincidence. The symbol appeared in a 13th century text describing sealed books of metal hidden by Jewish mystics fleeing Rome. The implications were staggering. If authentic, the Codices might not be early Christian at all, but medieval Jewish esoteric texts still groundbreaking but upending years of assumptions. Yet for every revelation, new questions festered. Why did neutron scans of two other sealed codices show nothing but blank pages? Were they decoys, or was the technology missing something? And why has no one located the original cave since the initial discovery? A clandestine expedition by YouTubers in 2023 claimed to find the site, but their coordinates led to an empty hillside, either a deliberate misdirection or proof that even the landscape is part of the mystery. The only certainty, the Codices refused to surrender their secrets easily. With each layer peeled back, they revealed just enough to tantalize, then twist the narrative in unexpected directions. Whether ancient scripture, medieval mysticism, or an elaborate ruse, their power lies not in what we've learned, but in how stubbornly they guard what we still don't know. Who crafted the Jordan Lead Codices? The answer depends on who you ask her and when. One theory points to a radical sect of Jewish Christians, survivors of the failed revolt against Rome in 70 CE, fleeing into the desert with salvaged fragments of their faith. Imagine these refugees carrying not scrolls that could burn or rot, but indestructible lead sheets etched with symbols only initiates could decipher. Their motives, preservation under persecution. The crude crucifixion imagery might not depict Jesus at all, but an executed rebel leader, his memory encrypted to evade Roman censors. The menorahs alongside these figures could signal dual allegiance, outwardly Jewish, yet secretly honoring a martyred Messiah. But another school of thought argues the creators weren't Christians at all, but Jewish mystics operating centuries later. The symbols bear striking resemblances to Kabbalistic diagrams from medieval Spain, particularly the use of geometric shapes as vessels for divine names. If correct, the codices might be physical manifestations of mystical practices, where lead, a metal associated with secrecy in alchemy, served as a conduit for hidden knowledge. Their sealed bindings mirror the Kabbalistic tradition of concealing teachings until the student is ready. Then there's the forgery angle. The late 20th century saw a surge in fake biblical artifacts, from the James ossuary to the infamous Gospel of Judas debacle. Skilled fraudsters, aware of the booming market for Christian relics, could have tailored the codices to fit trending narratives, mixing Paleo-Hebrew script with crucifixion imagery to create the ultimate saleable mystery. The inconsistencies in language and symbols might not be errors, but deliberate obfuscation, designed to keep scholars arguing while collectors paid premium prices. Yet the most provocative theory belongs to the Gnostics. These early Christian heretics believed salvation came through secret wisdom, not faith alone. Their texts, like those found at Nag Hammadi, were often buried to protect them from destruction. Lead would have been the perfect medium for their radical ideas, durable enough to survive persecution, heavy enough to stay hidden. The Codices' sealed rings might represent the Gnostic concept of hidden knowledge, accessible only to those who'd undergone spiritual awakening. Motives intertwine like the symbols themselves. Were the creators protectors of forbidden truths, artists of an elaborate con, or visionaries encoding doctrines too dangerous to speak aloud? Each possibility rewires our understanding of the past and the shadows that still linger between history and belief. The Jordan Lead Codices force us to confront a fundamental tension in how we understand the past. the uneasy dance between proof and belief. Archaeology prides itself on empirical evidence, on carbon dates and chemical analyses that pin artifacts to specific moments in time. Yet the codices, with their conflicting test results and murky origins, expose the limits of even the most advanced science. How do you authenticate an object when its materials could be ancient but its markings modern? When its meaning could be sacred scripture one moment and clever forgery the next? The saga reminds us that history is never just about what's buried, it's about who digs it up and why. Faith complicates the equation further. For believers, the possibility that these books might hold lost Christian teachings carries a weight no lab test can measure. What if they contain alternate versions of parables or rituals suppressed by the early church? That uncertainty creates a paradox. The less we know, the more room there is for hope or exploitation. The same symbols dismissed by scholars as anachronistic scribbles become divine messages to those hungry for connection. The codices hold up a mirror to how easily the human mind spins mystery into meaning, especially when it touches the sacred. Then there's the darker lesson: how easily truth becomes collateral in the battle over who controls the narrative. The Vatican's alleged interest, the black market's shadowy deals, even the academic turf wars, all reveal how quickly artifacts stop being about the past and start serving agendas in the present. History has always been rewritten by the victors, but the codices show how that rewriting happens today. Not just in libraries, but in labs, courtrooms, and the whispered negotiations of private collectors. Perhaps the most humbling revelation is how little separates a groundbreaking discovery from an elaborate hoax. Without a Rosetta Stone to decode the symbols, the codices remain Rorschach tests, reflecting back whatever the viewer wants to see. They challenge our assumptions about expertise, about the solid ground of scholarship, and about how much of the past we've truly preserved versus how much we've invented. In the end, their greatest legacy might not be any hidden truth they contain, but the questions they force us to ask about why we chase these mysteries in the first place, and what we're willing to overlook in the name of finding answers. The Jordan Lead Codices remain one of history's most stubborn enigmas, objects that refuse to surrender their secrets, no matter how many times we pry at their leaden pages. They've ignited fiery debates, exposed the fragility of expertise, and revealed how easily the line between faith and fraud can blur. Whether ancient scriptures or an elaborate ruse, their power lies not in what we've proven, but in what we're still desperate to believe. They challenge us to confront our own biases, the scholars who dismiss too quickly, the believers who cling too tightly, and the rest of us caught in the middle, wondering if truth is something we uncover or something we create. These unassuming metal books have outlasted empires, defied technology, and taunted the brightest minds with their cryptic symbols. They remind us that history isn't a puzzle to be solved, but a conversation, one where every discovery raises new questions and every answer invites fresh doubts. Perhaps that's their real lesson: the past is never truly settled. It shifts with each generation's hopes, fears, and relentless curiosity. So where does that leave us? Still staring at those weathered pages, still weighing the evidence, still wondering. And maybe that's exactly where we should be, because the moment we stop questioning is the moment we stop learning. Now it's your turn. What's your verdict, real or fake? Drop your thoughts below and let's keep the mystery alive.